Thanks everyone, and huge thanks for allowing me this wonderful opportunity to speak. I'm going to talk about urban forest engagement. So whereas my colleagues were talking about how planning is super important, I'm going to talk about how bringing everyone along on the journey is really, really important. So my background's in urban forestry. I've been doing this for about 8 years, first with grassroots organisations and not-for-profits, and I've only been working in local government for just over 12 months. Rightio, let's get into it. So, why invest in community engagement? So, 3 big reasons. It builds capacity, it strengthens relationships, it improves decision making, and it also mitigates risk. So some of these fantastic projects that everyone is hopefully delivering, they also have some negative impacts as well. We might spend a lot of money, but then we might see antisocial behaviour, or we might see some sort of disservices from the trees that we plant, leaf litter that might aggravate local residents, but if we're bringing them along on the journey right from the beginning, then we see that those negative impacts can be reduced once we create a bit more understanding. There's not really a clear definition of community engagement, but I just like to think of it as a way to manage change and really encouraging that two-way conversation. Everyone in the room kind of knows the language that everyone's using. They understand all those weird water terms that you guys talk about. But when you're talking about different professional industries, or community groups, residents, people with different educational levels, different cultural values, then you really need to make sure that you're understanding what they mean and the language that they use, and matching your language as well. So I guess I want to talk a little bit more about what capacity building can look like. That can look like getting more resources and materials for a project. Can be at a different scale. If it's a local community group, that might just be delivering some mulch to a local community group so that they can then revegetate an area. It can also include policy development, governance and approvals, evaluation and monitoring. In terms of building relationships, that can be knowledge transfer, so conferences like this are really, really wonderful. Transferring skills or transferable skills and competencies, social, professional and economic networks, so tapping into different funding streams as well. It can also be physical access as well. So if, for example, someone has mobility issues and they can't actually physically get to your community engagement activity, then that's a real problem, and then you're not able to access their valuable life experience. And then we've also got improving decision making. So once we have these different perspectives, we can make a better plan, a more inclusive plan, and achieve better outcomes. So I just want to talk about some of the influencing factors for urban forestry. So this is part of the toolkit that I developed as part of my master's. So it really looks at some of the different factors that influence good outcomes. So there's quite a lot there, and then there's a big table that goes along with it. But poor outcomes can result from overly complex rules, poor stakeholder management, difficult to find information, systemic bias. It sounds like all of the things that seem to happen in local government. We just seem to keep perpetuating this. So community engagement can be a really great way to start to overcome some of these poor outcomes. And then, of course, each local government has its own flavour. So we heard with the City of Wanneroo that they're really leaning into, affordable housing, trying to provide homes for people, whereas other local governments have other community or capital community assets that they want to lean into, such as natural environment or You know, might be knowledge from a university community or so on and so forth. So I just want to talk about a couple of different engagement frameworks. So the one on the top is the IAP2 framework, the International Association of Public Participation. Some of you might have done some IAP2 training. This is a really useful framework when you're looking at resourcing for community engagement. So there's some great research out of Oxfam where they look at the amount of money that you should budget in proportion to your project. So if you just need to inform the residents that a project's happening, then typically around about 5% of your total budget is a good sort of benchmark. If you have a really, really complex project that requires multiple coordination of stakeholders and agencies and is quite a high value project as well, then you might want to look at engagement that is on a much deeper level, so moving into consultation or actually involving and collaborating with partners. So we obviously heard earlier about some great collaboration that's been happening in the water space earlier. The model at the bottom is a social change model. This is really useful for figuring out the sort of bigger picture. So looking at things from a more strategic, through a more strategic lens. So if your desired outcome is, for example, a greener, more livable city or a more water-wise city, some of the broader methods that you can use: advocacy, incentives, rules and regulations, design and innovation, education, behaviour change, and also community action. So that's looking at sort of a bigger picture from community engagement, and the engagement framework from the IAP2, where you're looking at that resourcing. That's really about the specific tools that you're using. So whether that's a survey, whether that's a workshop, or something else. 3 minutes, thank you. And I've got 2 slides left. So this is just a very small snapshot of a few of the engagement activities that I've done in the last 12 months at Canning. Lots of knowledge sharing at the World Forum on Urban Forests in Washington, DC. The Education and Design Eco-Dying Workshop was part of WA Tree Festival. So that took a bunch of local residents along the Shelley foreshore. We discussed the different issues of the local area. We talked about the connection between the water and the land and the vegetation. A lot of the participants shared some personal stories, so the way that they used the river. One lady shared how she used to take her dog walking every day there until he passed away, and now she sits on a bench and talks to him, which was really quite a beautiful and moving moment. We also talk about how to disseminate rules and regulations around verge guidelines. So we had a workshop with Mel Lagozo, who's really, really awesome, and she talked about how we can encourage nature onto our verges. She takes some fantastic photos of native bees on her verge. It's really fun. We've also done some work with the cultural ambassadors. So we advertise every year for leaders from in the Canning community from different cultural backgrounds to come in, and we will work with them on a project, and they'll help us refine our ideas so that it's more accepted and that the communications we're using are actually fit for purpose. Then I've also done the Green Space program. So this is looking at how we provide choice to residents. So it's a geospatial interface. Residents can log on to that website. They can see which species of tree has been allocated to their verge, and then they can say either, yes, I'm really happy with that, or actually I think I'd like to move that 3 metres to the right so that I can fit my boat on the verge. And then we also did a plein air painting workshop as part of WA Tree Festival. and that culminated in an art exhibition at our major tree giveaway as well. The art workshops are a particularly useful engagement method because they really foster a deep connection between the community and the local government officers, and the knowledge sharing is much more profound than just, you know, flicking out a social media post or a set of guidelines in the mail. And that is me. As I said, I've done an engagement toolkit. There's a QR code there if you want to grab that. It's got lots of different tools and methods for community engagement, and I hope it's useful to you. Thanks very much.